Smell that? That is the scent of corrugated cardboard, packing tape, and desperation. It is Black Friday, it is Cyber Monday, it is the Holy Week of American consumerism. Right now, you are probably refreshing a tracking number for a package containing a waffle iron you do not need, a 65-inch TV that will not fit in your car, and a bulk pack of socks. You feel modern. You feel like a digital god summoning goods from the ether with the tap of a glass screen. You look at Amazon's Prime logo and think, this is the peak of human innovation. We have mastered the art of getting stuff from point A to point me. I hate to break it to you, but you are not part of a revolution, you are just doing a high-speed cosplay of your great-grandmother. We like to pretend that Jeff Bezos invented the everything store. We act like 2-day shipping is a miracle of the Silicon Age. But if we strip away the Wi-Fi, the server farms, and the miserable warehouse robots, we find the exact same supply chain skeleton that was built over a century ago. Before there was the Buy Now button, there was the postcard. Before there was the internet, there was the railroad. And before there was a bald billionaire launching himself into space in a phallic rocket, there was a railroad station agent in Minnesota named Richard. Today, we are going to tear apart the history of the original logistics empire. We are going to look at how a catalog printed on newsprint became the toilet paper of a nation, how a building in Chicago became a physical computer made of bricks and gravity chutes, and how the Sears Roebuck Company did not just sell to America, they built the supply chain operating system that Amazon is still running on today. Put down the credit card. Let's talk about how we got here. This is Critical Path, where we explore stories and innovations about our global supply chain that connect our world to your everyday life. To understand why your porch is full of boxes today, we have to go back to 1886. The location is North Redwood, Minnesota. It is cold, it is boring, and the internet is currently just a telegraph wire buzzing with Morse code. Meet Richard Sears. He is not a tech mogul. He is a station agent for the Minneapolis and St. Louis Railway. His job is literally logistics manager for a town that smells like coal smoke. One day, a local jeweler refuses a shipment of gold-filled pocket watches. The supplier does not want to pay the freight to ship them back. They are distressed inventory. Now, a normal person sees a box of unwanted watches. Richard Sears sees an arbitrage opportunity. He buys the watches, uses the telegraph, the 19th century version of a direct message, to contact other station agents down the line and sells them at a markup. He sold the lot in days. He made a profit of $5,000. In 1886 money, that is enough to buy a small army or a very large hat. Sears realized something profound, something that is the cornerstone of modern dropshipping. You do not need to make the product. You do not even really need to like the product. You just need to control the channel of distribution. He moves to Chicago. Why Chicago? Because in the late 1800s, Chicago was the supply chain hub of the universe. It was where every railroad met. It was the sorting center for the entire continent. If America was a body, Chicago was the heart, pumping goods out to the extremities. Sears partners with a guy named Alva Roebuck. Roebuck is the Wozniak to Sears, Jobs. Roebuck actually fixes the watches. Sears just screams about how great they are. They start a mail-order watch business. But Sears, being a chaotic maximalist, realizes that if people will buy a watch by mail, they will buy anything by mail. But there is a problem, a supply chain problem. In the 1890s, most Americans lived in rural areas. To buy something, they had to go to the general store. The general store owner was the ultimate gatekeeper. He had a monopoly. He charged high prices, offered credits at loan shark rates, and carried a terrible selection. If you wanted a specific plow and he did not have it, you were out of luck. Richard Sears looked at this fragmented, inefficient supply chain and decided to nuke it from orbit. He would bypass the middleman entirely. He would go direct to consumer, 100 years before Warby Parker made it cool. His weapon was not an app, it was a book. Let's talk about the catalog. You get junk mail today and throw it out. You have no respect for the medium. But the Sears Roebuck catalog was not junk mail. It was the internet in paperback form. By 1897, this thing was over 700 pages long. It weighed nearly 4 pounds. It listed over 200,000 items. Let's pause and appreciate the SKU complexity here. Stock keeping units. Managing 200,000 SKUs today with computers is hard. Managing 200,000 SKUs with pen, paper, and guys wearing suspenders is madness. You could buy a suit. You could buy a Stradivarius violin. You could buy a firearm. You could buy veterinary medicine that was mostly cocaine. You could buy a tombstone for when the cocaine medicine didn't work. Later on, you could literally buy a house, a kit home, that would arrive in a boxcar with 30,000 parts and an instruction manual that said, "Good luck." Sears understood the long tail of demand long before Chris Anderson wrote a book about it. He knew that a farmer in Nebraska did not just want a plow, he wanted a velvet couch to impress his neighbors. Sears promised to deliver it. But the genius was not just the selection, it was the copy. Richard Sears was the greatest copywriter who ever lived. He wrote the descriptions himself. He used tiny font to cram in as much information as possible. The tone was frantic, exciting, and filled with superlatives. It was clickbait printed on paper. He created a sense of urgency by telling customers that prices could go up at any moment. He also utilized a brilliant piece of psychological engineering. Satisfaction guaranteed or your money back. Today, we take returns for granted. We buy 3 pairs of pants, wear one, and send 2 back covered in cat hair. In the 1890s, caveat emptor, buyer beware, was the law of the land. If you bought a horse and it died the next day, that was your problem. Sears shifted the risk from the buyer to the seller. This created trust. Trust is the lubricant of the supply chain. Without trust, nobody sends cash in an envelope to a stranger in Chicago. And here is the kicker, the twist that proves Sears was playing 4D chess. The catalog was printed on cheap, uncoated newsprint. It was slightly rough. Why does this matter? Because in rural outhouses in the 1890s, toilet paper was a luxury. The Sears catalog was free. Americans would read the catalog, dream about the products, and then, page by page, use it for hygiene. Sears literally occupied the most intimate moment of his customers' day. He was the only media channel in the bathroom. Imagine if Amazon could project ads onto your shower curtain. That is the level of market penetration we are talking about. But selling the stuff is the easy part. Marketing is just noise. The real magic, the critical path, is fulfillment. By 1905, Sears was drowning in his own success. Orders were pouring in faster than they could ship them. The warehouse was chaos. They were sending pants to people who ordered pianos. The system was breaking. They needed a machine. Enter the Sears Merchandise Building Tower in Chicago. Opened in 1906, this was not just a building. It was the largest wooden structure in the world. It was 3 million square feet of floor space. It was a logistical temple. But it was not the size that mattered. It was the system. Sears did not have computers. They did not have barcodes. They did not have RFID tags. So, how do you fulfill 100,000 orders a day without losing your mind? They hired a guy named Otto Düring. Düring is the unsung hero of this story. He looked at the chaos of the warehouse and applied Fordism, assembly line logic, before Henry Ford had fully perfected it. Düring created the schedule system. Here is how it worked. This is pure supply chain pornography, so pay attention. When an order arrived in the mailroom, let's say, a letter from Mrs. Higgins wanting a dress, a hammer, and a teapot, it was opened and given a timestamp. Let's say, 8 a.m. Based on that timestamp, the order was assigned a specific shipping train leaving later that day. Let's say the train leaves at 6 p.m. They calculated backward from the train's departure to create a strict schedule for every department. The order for the dress went to the clothing floor. The order for the hammer went to hardware. The order for the teapot went to housewares. Each department had a ticket with a precise time on it. This teapot must be at the assembly room at 2:15 p.m., not 2:10, not 2:20, 2:15. If a department was late, they did not just get a stern talking to. The system was designed so that they could not be late. Why? Because of the gravity chutes. The entire building was a machine. Merchandise was stored on the upper floors. The shipping dock was on the ground floor. Connect the two with a complex series of spiral chutes and conveyor belts. At the exact scheduled minute, the hardware clerk puts the hammer in the chute. The clothing clerk puts the dress in the chute. Gravity takes over. These items slide down through the building, spiraling through the darkness, converging on the assembly floor. Now imagine the assembly floor. It is a massive room with moving belts. If the math is right, and Düring made sure the math was right, the hammer, the dress, and the teapot arrive at the sorting bin at the exact same moment. A packer grabs them, boxes them, slaps a label on, and throws it onto a train. This is batch processing combined with just-in-time assembly. It is a physical algorithm. The building itself was the CPU. The clerks were the logic gates. The gravity was the electricity. They could process 100,000 orders a day. That is a number that modern e-commerce centers still respect. And they did it without a single microchip. They did it with pneumatic tubes, slide rules, and the fear of God. This reduced the order cycle time, the time from receiving the letter to shipping the box, from weeks to days. Sears became the Amazon Prime of 1906. If you lived in the middle of nowhere, Sears was your lifeline to civilization. You could build your entire life out of that catalog. For decades, this machine was unstoppable. Sears was not just a store, it was the GDP of the American family. They had the data. They knew what size shoes people in Alabama wore. They knew when harvest season was in Iowa. They had the best forecasting models in the world because they had millions of customers telling them exactly what they wanted via handwritten letters. So what happened? How do you go from being the everything store to being a sad, empty anchor tenant in a dying mall that smells like pretzels and regret? Success is a funny thing in supply chains. The solution to yesterday's problem becomes the bottleneck of tomorrow's. Sears dominated the mail order game. But in the 1920s, the world changed. The automobile arrived. Suddenly, rural customers were not trapped on their farms. They could drive to town. They wanted to see the goods. They did not want to wait for the train. They wanted instant gratification. Sears, to their credit, pivoted. A guy named General Robert E. Wood took over. He looked at the census data, again data-driven decision-making, and saw that America was urbanizing. He said, "We need stores." But he did not build stores downtown where the expensive real estate was. He built them on the outskirts of town. Why? Because he knew people had cars. He built stores with massive parking lots. This was revolutionary. Sears invented the modern department store experience. They invented the concept of shopping as an outing. For the next 50 years, Sears was untouchable. They had the catalog for the rural folks and the stores for the suburban folks. They owned the supply chain from the factory to the living room. They created brands like Kenmore, Craftsman, Die Hard. Vertical integration. But then, the rot set in. It was not a sudden death, it was a slow, agonizing supply chain failure. As the decades rolled on, Sears stopped being run by logistics geniuses and started being run by accountants and hedge fund managers. In the 1990s, a new disruptor appeared: Walmart. Walmart did not care about catalogs, they cared about cross-docking and satellite tracking trucks. Walmart used technology to squeeze every cent out of the supply chain, offering lower prices than Sears ever could. Then came the internet. Here is the great irony, the tragedy of this story. Sears should have been Amazon. They had the warehouses, they had the last-mile delivery network, they had the brand trust, they had the catalog, which was literally a paper website. All they had to do was put the catalog online. But they did not. They were paralyzed by their own infrastructure. They were obsessed with protecting their physical stores. This is called the sunk cost fallacy. They had billions tied up in real estate and inventory. They could not imagine a world where the store did not matter. While Jeff Bezos was in a garage figuring out how to ship books without holding inventory, Sears was arguing about the layout of the tool department in a store in Topeka. They viewed the internet as a novelty, a distraction. By the time they tried to catch up, the algorithm had changed. Amazon was not just selling stuff, they were selling speed. Amazon built a fulfillment network that made the old Chicago gravity chutes look like gravity chutes. Amazon introduced Kiva robots, little orange Roombas that lift entire shelves and bring them to the packer. It is the same concept as Sears, pneumatic tubes and chutes, just digitized. It is still about bringing the product to the packer to minimize walking time. The physics has not changed, only the processor speed. Sears withered. They sold off their credit card division. They sold off their brands. They sold the real estate. They were stripped for parts, like a car left in a bad neighborhood. The Chicago Tower, the Consumer's Bible Temple, it is essentially an office building now. The chutes are gone. So, here we are, Cyber Monday. You are going to buy a bunch of stuff from Amazon. You are going to track the package. You are going to get a notification that it is 10 stops away. When you see that blue van pull up, I want you to remember Richard Sears. I want you to realize that Amazon is just Sears 2.0 with better server capacity and worse employee bathroom breaks. Amazon's subscribe and AMP, save, that is just the Sears standing order model from 1910. Amazon Basics batteries, that is just Sears Kenmore branding, white labeling generic goods to undercut the name brands. Amazon's massive distribution centers? They are the spiritual successors to the Chicago plant. They are just hubs in a spoke system designed to batch process human desire into cardboard boxes. The supply chain does not really invent new concepts, it just gets faster. It cycles. We went from the general store to the catalog, to the department store to the internet. And now Amazon is opening physical stores. Amazon Fresh, Amazon Style. They are building department stores. We are literally reinventing Sears again. The snake is eating its own tail, and the tail is made of prime tape. So, as you unbox your air fryer that you will use exactly twice, pour one out for the original kings of logistics. Pour one out for the guys who sorted hammers and dresses by gravity. Because without the Sears Roebuck catalog, there is no Amazon. And without Amazon, you would actually have to leave your house today. And nobody wants to do that. I am Critical Path. Keep your inventory moving. And for the love of God, recycle your boxes. Hey, thanks for watching. If you learned something about the logistical nightmare that creates your happiness, hit that like button. It helps the algorithm, which is basically the modern version of the station master, deciding if our video gets on the train or stays on the platform. In the comments, let me know, what is the weirdest thing you have ever bought online at 2 a.m.? I am betting it is weirder than the cocaine medicine Sears used to sell.